And this is my digital discussion for week 4. Thanks for joining me. The first chapter, Do Machines Make History? I found this to be very interesting. My picture kind of reflects the change from the 60s and 70s, maybe the 80s, I guess, into the modern age, into the 2020s, and how we've seen things change because of society and innovation. So I put a couple of key takeaways on here that I thought were very interesting. Invention and innovation is an attribute of some societies, but not others. And the book didn't really go into why this was the case, but just that it is the case. So I found that to be very interesting, but I would also be very, very interested in the why behind that. Another point was that areas of application reflect social influences, right? So, I think about things like the cell phone, which, in its inception, I remember we had one and it was in a bag and we carried it much like a purse. And then we had a car phone, and then we had our first cell phones. So I've watched the progression of these through the years, and what started out as a means to make a phone call when you were not at home has now advanced to having a computer in your hands at all times. So very, very interesting. And then the third point for this chapter was that technological change will be compatible with existing social conditions. We would not have invented the cell phone back in the early 1900s. We didn't have the technological know-how, but we also did not have the societal needs for that. So I thought that was a very interesting point. The second chapter, second book, we discussed, read about Moore's Law, and he proposed a hypothesis, right, relating to computers and the computer industry and how it would grow by an exponential increase of 10% every 10 years. And that exponential increase is anything that goes up by a constant proportion. And even though there was no scientific reason, I guess, for this to actually take place, the computer industry itself kind of propagated that Moore's law, or his hypothesis became a law, I guess. His hypothesis was specifically tied to computers and chips and transistors. And it was funny because the book, which I think was written in 2021, said that we have almost reached the capacity or limitations of current chips. And now I'm thinking about how NVIDIA is already creating chips that will boost AI, artificial intelligence. And then it did talk about how the leap from just the basics of artificial intelligence and how that's combined with the increase in computers and technology has led to other things like machine learning, or even more recently, generative AI. And then finally, we'll discuss the chapter on Ayn Rand's books, which I found to be very interesting as well. The genius aesthetic that rules the tech industry relies again and again on this purely gestural kind of courage, on hyping everyday things into grand acts of nonconformism and even resistance. Great quote. It was talking about how Uber drivers are not just food deliverers, but they are really, masters of their own destiny. They have their own jobs, their own businesses. They are taking control of their lives and doing this in brave ways. Computer coders are superheroes by bringing us these programs that we need, So it's a very, very interesting philosophy that is born out of her writings. And on the left side of the screen there, you can see a couple of the giants of Silicon Valley and technology, if you will, who, have purported and to be influenced by Ayn Rand and her writings. So thank you for joining me for my week 4 recap. I hope that you find it helpful. Thanks again.